The sterile silence of Dr. Anderson's office was louder than any scream. Starla sat on the edge of the leather examination chair, her knuckles white as she gripped her husband's hand, or the hand of the man she thought she knew. Across the room, Jessica, the woman who had shattered their world just weeks before, smirked with one hand resting protectively over her belly. She had come for money, she had come for status, and she had come to replace Starla. But as Dr. Anderson adjusted his glasses and looked up from the paternity file, the smirk vanished. He didn't look at Jessica. He looked straight at Starla. "Mrs. Benson," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "You need to see this." What he read next didn't just expose a cheater, it unlocked a crime that had been hidden for 20 years. The crystal wine glasses on the mahogany dining table caught the flickering light of the tapered candles, casting long, dancing shadows against the cream-colored walls of the suburban Chicago home. Starla Benson checked her watch for the third time in 10 minutes. It was 7:45 p.m. David was 15 minutes late, which, in the grand scheme of their 10-year marriage, was negligible. But tonight was different. Tonight was the 10th anniversary. The tin anniversary, symbolizing durability and flexibility. Starla smoothed the fabric of her emerald green dress, the one David had admired in the window of a boutique in the Loop 3 months ago. She had bought it specifically for tonight. At 36, Starla felt the weight of the last decade. They had built a life that looked perfect on paper. A paid-off colonial house in a leafy neighborhood, her thriving landscape architecture firm, and David's steady climb up the corporate ladder at a logistics company. But the nursery down the hall remained empty, a perfectly decorated room painted a soft, hopeful yellow that had slowly turned into a storage space for Starla's drafting supplies. The sound of tires crunching on the gravel driveway pulled her from her thoughts. She took a deep breath, forcing a smile onto her face. Durability and flexibility, she reminded herself. The front door opened and David walked in. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his suit jacket slung over one arm. He was a handsome man, with the kind of approachable, boyish charm that made clients trust him instantly, but tonight his face was grey. "Happy anniversary," Starla said softly, stepping into the hallway to greet him. David flinched. It was a small movement, barely a twitch of his shoulders, but Starla saw it. He looked at her, his eyes wide and hollow, as if he didn't recognize her for a second. "Starla?" he rasped, dropping his briefcase with a heavy thud. I'm so sorry I'm late." "It's okay," she said, reaching out to take his jacket. "Dinner is ready. I made the braciole you like." "I can't eat," David said, stepping back from her touch. The rejection stung worse than a slap. Before Starla could ask what was wrong, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite, tentative ring. It was a long, insistent press that echoed through the house. David froze. He didn't just stop moving. He seemed to turn to stone. He looked at the door with terrified recognition. "David?" Starla asked, a cold knot forming in her stomach. "Are we expecting someone?" He didn't answer. Starla moved past him, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She unlocked the door and pulled it open. Standing on the porch was a woman who looked like she had stepped out of a chaotic windstorm. She was young, painfully young, perhaps 24 or 25. She wore a rain-soaked trench coat over a cheap waitress uniform, her blonde hair plastered to her forehead. Her mascara was smeared beneath eyes that were blue, sharp, and currently blazing with desperation. "Can I help you?" Starla asked, confusion warring with instinct. The woman didn't look at Starla. She looked past her, locking eyes with David, who was still paralyzed in the hallway. "You didn't tell her," the woman said. Her voice was shaky but loud enough to carry into the street. "You promised you would tell her tonight, David." Starla turned slowly to look at her husband. David was shaking his head, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. "Tell me what?" Starla asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. The woman stepped into the foyer, uninvited. She brought the smell of rain and cheap vanilla perfume with her. She placed a hand on her stomach, a gesture so universal, so primal, that Starla felt the breath leave her lungs before the words were even spoken. "I'm Jessica," the stranger said, her chin lifting defiantly. "And I'm pregnant. It's David's." The silence that followed was absolute. The candles in the dining room flickered, casting a shadow that seemed to stretch out and swallow the entire hallway. "David," Starla said. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. She felt a strange, icy calm, the kind that descends right before a car crash. David finally moved. He stumbled forward, reaching for the woman's arm, but not aggressively, pleadingly. "Jessica, please, not like this. We talked about this. We talked about you leaving her," Jessica shouted, shaking him off. She turned to Starla, her eyes scanning the expensive dress, the manicured nails, the perfect home. "He told me you were roommates. He said you slept in separate beds. He said you were sterile, and he only stayed out of pity." The word sterile hit Starla like a physical blow. They had struggled with infertility for 5 years. It was their private grief, a pain they had navigated with expensive treatments and tearful nights. For this stranger to wield it as a weapon meant David hadn't just slept with her. He had dissected their marriage for her entertainment. "Get out," Starla said. "I'm not going anywhere," Jessica snapped. "I have nowhere else to go. My landlord kicked me out because I can't make rent. David promised to set me up in an apartment. He promised to take care of us." "David," Starla said, her voice rising now, cracking the icy calm, "tell her to leave." David looked between the two women, his wife of 10 years, standing in her anniversary dress, and his mistress, shivering and pregnant in the foyer. He slumped against the wall, covering his face with his hands. I can't," David whispered. "She has nowhere to go, Starla. It's my child." Starla looked at the man she loved. She saw the weakness in his jaw, the cowardice in his eyes. And in that moment, the durability of the tin anniversary snapped. "Fine," Starla said. She walked to the dining room, blew out the candles, and picked up the bottle of expensive Cabernet she had opened to breathe. She poured a glass, not for David, but for herself. She took a long sip, staring at the cooling dinner. "She can stay tonight in the guest room," Starla called out, her voice flat. "But tomorrow we go to Dr. Anderson. I want a paternity test. And David, you're sleeping on the couch." The next morning the house felt contaminated. Starla woke up at 5 a.m., her body aching as if she had run a marathon. She had spent the night locked in the master bedroom, listening to the silence of the house, imagining the stranger sleeping down the hall in the room that was supposed to be a nursery. She found Jessica sitting at the kitchen island, eating a bowl of cereal. Jessica was wearing one of David's old college t-shirts, a shirt Starla had been looking for just last week. The sight of it on this woman made bile rise in Starla's throat. "Good morning," Jessica said. The desperation from the night before was gone, replaced by a smug comfort. She looked around the kitchen, her eyes lingering on the granite countertops and the stainless steel appliances. "You have a nice place. A bit cold, though. Not very homey." Starla ignored the comment and poured herself black coffee. "Dr. Anderson has an opening at 10 a.m. I called his emergency line. Be ready." David walked in a moment later, looking like he hadn't slept at all. He wore the same clothes as the night before, rumpled and stained. He wouldn't look Starla in the eye. "Starla, about last night," he began. "Save it for the lawyers, David," she said, leaning against the counter. "Right now, we deal with the medical facts." Jessica let out a short, sharp laugh. "You don't believe me. You think I'd blow up my life for a lie. I'm 10 weeks along. David and we've been together for 4 months. 4 months. Starla did the math. 4 months ago, David had been on a business trip to Denver. Starla had stayed home to undergo another round of hormone injections for IVF, injections David was supposed to help her with. He had missed it. "We met at the diner near his office," Jessica continued, seemingly enjoying the narration. "I didn't know he was married at first. He wasn't wearing a ring." Starla looked at David's left hand. The ring was there now. "Get dressed," Starla said to both of them. "We are leaving in 30 minutes." The drive to the clinic was suffocating. David drove, Jessica sat in the passenger seat. She had claimed motion sickness required her to sit in the front. And Starla sat in the back, feeling like a stranger in her own car. She spent the ride looking up Jessica Harper on her phone. There wasn't much, a Facebook profile that hadn't been updated in 2 years. A few photos of a girl who looked much younger, partying in dive bars. No employment history on LinkedIn. It was as if Jessica Harper barely existed until she walked onto Starla's porch. Dr. Anderson was an old family friend. He had been Starla's OB-GYN through the years of fertility treatments. He knew the history. He knew the pain. When they walked into his office, his warm smile faltered as he took in the trio. "Starla," Dr. Anderson said, nodding to her. He glanced at David, his expression cooling significantly. "And this must be the patient." "Jessica," she said, hopping up onto the examination table, "I need a confirmation and a DNA test. She doesn't believe it's his." She pointed a thumb at Starla. "Standard procedure in these situations," Dr. Anderson said professionally, though his eyes were kind when they met Starla's. "We can do a blood draw for a non-invasive prenatal paternity test. It's highly accurate. We can also do an ultrasound to date the pregnancy." "Do the ultrasound first," Starla said. She needed to see it. She needed the visual proof to kill the tiny, irrational hope inside her that this was all a hallucination. Dr. Anderson applied the gel. The room went silent, save for the hum of the machine. Jessica stared at the ceiling, a small smile playing on her lips. David stared at the floor. Starla watched the monitor. There it was. A tiny rhythmic flutter, a heartbeat. "There is a fetus," Dr. Anderson confirmed, his voice devoid of celebration. "Measurements consistent with 10 weeks and 4 days. Jessica turned her head to look at Starla. "See? I told you, he has strong swimmers. Just not with you." Starla felt tears prick her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Do the blood test," she commanded. After the samples were taken, Dr. Anderson told them the results would be expedited. "I'll have them in 48 hours. I suggest you all go home and wait." The ride back was even quieter. When they arrived, Jessica immediately went to the guest room and shut the door. David lingered in the kitchen. "Starla, I need to explain," he said. "Explain what, David? That you found a waitress? That you told her I was sterile?" Starla's voice shook. "Why her? Why now?" It just happened. I was lonely, Starla. You were so focused on the IVF, on the schedule, on the temperature charts. I felt like a donor, not a husband. So you went and got someone else pregnant? To prove you were a man? "I didn't mean for this to happen," David shouted, running a hand through his hair. "She said she was on the pill. She swore she was on the pill." Starla looked at the closed guest room door. Something about Jessica gnawed at her. The confidence, the way she had moved into the house, the specific insults about Starla's fertility. It felt targeted. It felt rehearsed. "I'm going to the office," Starla said, grabbing her keys. "I can't be in this house with her." "Starla, wait." She left him standing there, but she didn't go to her architecture firm. She drove to the diner near David's office. The Blue Spoon. It was a greasy spoon establishment, the kind with sticky menus and excellent coffee. Starla walked in and sat at the counter. A waitress, an older woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Brenda, poured her a coffee. "You know a girl named Jessica?" Starla asked, sliding a $20 bill onto the counter. "Worked here recently? Blonde, mid-20s?" Brenda eyed the money, then Starla. She swiped the bill into her apron. "Yeah, I know Jess. She got fired about 2 weeks ago." "What for?" "Stealing tips and drama." "Always drama with that one," Brenda said, wiping down the counter. "She was always looking for a mark, you know, asking about customers, who drove the nice cars, who wore the expensive watches." "Did she date a guy who came in here? Tall, brown hair, wears suits?" "David?" Brenda paused. "David, the logistics guy?" "Yeah, he came in for lunch a lot. Jess was obsessed with him, but—" Brenda frowned. "I never saw them together. She just waited on him, flirted a lot. I figured he brushed her off." "She says she's pregnant with his baby." Brenda snorted. "Jess says a lot of things. Last year she said she was the secret daughter of a senator." "Girl is a pathological liar." Starla's heart skipped a beat. "But she is pregnant. I saw the ultrasound." "Oh, she might be pregnant," Brenda shrugged. "She was seeing a guy named Mike, biker type, real piece of work. They broke up right before she got fired. She was terrified of him." Starla felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Jessica was pregnant. But was it David's, or was David just the Mark Brenda described? The safe harbor with the nice house and the passive wife. But David had admitted to sleeping with her. He hadn't denied the affair. Unless… Starla's phone buzzed. It was a text from David. She's asking for money. She says she needs $10,000 for medical expenses and debt, or she's going to go to HR at my company. Starla, if she goes to HR, I lose my job. The morality clause. Starla stared at the phone. It was blackmail. It was textbook blackmail. She texted back, "Don't give her a cent, I'm coming home." She had to dig deeper. If Jessica was a grifter, she had picked the wrong architect to mess with. Starla knew how to look at a structure and find the structural failure. She just had to find where Jessica was weak. As Starla started her car, she decided to make one more call. She called her brother, Robert, who worked as a private investigator in the city. "Rob," she said when he picked up, "I need you to run a background check, deep dive, a woman named Jessica Harper, and find out everything you can about a biker named Mike." "Trouble?" Robert asked. "You have no idea," Starla replied. "I think my husband is being framed, or he's an idiot. I need to know which one it is before I divorce him." The house was suffocating. When Starla returned from her meeting with Robert, the air inside felt heavy, thick with tension and the cloying scent of Jessica's vanilla perfume. It was everywhere, on the throw pillows, in the hallway, and most disturbingly, lingering near the master bedroom. Starla found Jessica in the living room, feet propped up on the antique coffee table. She was flipping through a magazine, a glass of orange juice in her hand. But it wasn't the juice that caught Starla's eye. It was the necklace resting against Jessica's throat, a delicate silver chain with a small sapphire pendant. It belonged to Starla's grandmother. It was supposed to be in a jewelry box in the master closet, a room Starla had explicitly told Jessica was off limits. "That's mine," Starla said, her voice low and dangerous. Jessica looked up, unbothered. She touched the pendant lightly. "Oh, this? I found it on the bathroom counter. I thought it was just costume jewelry. It matches my eyes, don't you think?" "It was in my closet." Starla stepped forward, hand outstretched. "Take it off. Now." Jessica smirked, slowly unclasping the chain. "You're so possessive, Starla. David said you were… rigid. He said you care more about your things than people." She dropped the necklace into Starla's palm. "Maybe that's why he came to me." Starla's hand closed around the cold metal. She wanted to scream, to drag this intruder out by her hair, but she knew that would play right into Jessica's hands. Jessica wanted a reaction. She wanted Starla to be the crazy wife, so David would feel even more trapped. Instead, Starla walked past her into the kitchen, where David was staring into a cup of black coffee. He looked like a ghost. "She was in our room," Starla said, placing the necklace on the counter. "She went through my jewelry." David didn't look up. "I'll talk to her." "Talk to her?" Starla slammed her hand on the counter. "David, wake up. She's not just a pregnant mistress. She's dismantling our life. She's stealing. She's lying." David finally looked at her, his eyes bloodshot. "I know, okay? I know. But what do you want me to do? If I kick her out, she goes to the board. I lose my job, my pension, everything. We lose the house." "Tell me about that night," Starla demanded, pulling a stool out and sitting directly across from him. "The night you conceived, every detail." David rubbed his face. "I told you, it was the company mixer. I had a few drinks." "How many?" "2, maybe 3, gin and tonics." "You can handle 3 drinks, David. You're 6'2". "I know," he whispered. "That's the thing. I remember ordering the 3rd one. Jessica brought it to me. She was working the bar that night. She smiled, said it was on the house. And then…" He trailed off, looking confused. "Then nothing, just flashes. A cab, her apartment, the smell of that vanilla perfume. And then waking up the next morning with a headache that felt like a drill." Starla's eyes narrowed. "You blacked out after 3 drinks? I thought maybe I was just tired. Stressed about the IVF." "Or you were drugged," Starla said. David blinked. "Drugged? Why would she…" "To get this," Starla gestured to the house, to him, "to get leverage." "David, did you actually have sex? Do you remember it?" I woke up naked," he stammered, his face flushing. "She was in the bathroom. There was a condom wrapper on the floor. She came out and said we had a wild night. So you have no memory of the act itself? No. Starla felt a surge of adrenaline. It was a classic honey trap, but she needed proof. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was her brother, Robert. She stepped onto the patio, sliding the glass door shut behind her. "Tell me you found something," she said. "I found a lot." Robert's voice was grim. "Your Jessica isn't Jessica Harper. That's an identity she stole from a roommate in college who moved abroad. Her real name is Jessica Louty, and she has a rap sheet in Ohio and Kentucky." "What for?" "Petty theft, fraud, and one charge of extortion that was dropped 2 years ago because the witness, a wealthy dentist, refused to testify. Presumably because he didn't want his wife to know." "She's a pro," Starla breathed. "She is. But here's the kicker, Starla. She's not working alone. I pulled her phone records. Don't ask me how. She's been making a lot of calls to a number registered to a Mike Travis. He's a bouncer at a club downtown, violent history, assault, blackmail. They've been in contact for 6 months, long before she started working at David's favorite diner. It was a setup from day one, Starla realized. They targeted him. Exactly. And Starla, there's one more thing. I checked her medical records, or tried to. There's no record of a Jessica Louty or Harper seeing an OB/GYN in the state until she walked into Dr. Anderson's office with you. "But I saw the ultrasound, Rob. There's a baby." "Then she's pregnant," Robert said. "But the question is, whose baby is it? If she's been with this Mike guy for 6 months, well, do the math." "We need the DNA test," Starla said. "Dr. Anderson said 48 hours. "Be careful, Starla," Robert warned. "If she realizes you're onto her, or if Mike thinks the payout is threatened, these people get desperate." That night, Starla didn't sleep. She waited until the house was silent, until David's snoring drifted from the couch and the guest room door remained shut for an hour. Moving like a shadow, she crept through the living room. She had bought 3 tiny, motion-activated nanny cams from a spy shop on her way home. She hid one in the bookshelf, wedged between 2 hardcovers. She placed another on top of the kitchen cabinets, obscured by a decorative vine. The third she risked placing in the hallway, aimed directly at the guest room door. The next morning, the atmosphere was brittle. Starla played her part perfectly. She made pancakes. She asked Jessica if she needed any prenatal vitamins. She even offered to drive her shopping for maternity clothes. "You're taking this well," Jessica said, eyeing her suspiciously over a forkful of syrup-drenched pancake. "I've had time to think," Starla lied smoothly. "If this is David's child, it's innocent. We have to do what's right." David looked at Starla with a mix of confusion and gratitude. He didn't know about the cameras. He didn't know about Robert. Starla needed him to look genuinely beaten so Jessica would drop her guard. "I have to go to the site today," Starla said, wiping her mouth. "Big project in Lake Forest. I'll be gone until late." She kissed David on the cheek, a cold, perfunctory kiss, and left. But she didn't go to Lake Forest. She drove 2 blocks over, parked her car, and pulled up the camera feed on her tablet. For 2 hours, nothing happened. Jessica watched TV. She ate. She napped. Then, at 11:30 a.m., her phone rang. Jessica checked the hallway to make sure David had left for work. He had left 20 minutes prior. She answered the phone, her voice changing instantly. The sweet, vulnerable tone vanished. "Yeah? No, he's a mess. He's totally broken," Jessica said, pacing the living room. "The wife is weird, though. 1 minute she's a bitch, the next she's Mother Teresa. I don't trust her." Pause. "Don't worry about the test, Mike. I told you, I handled it. The timeline matches. If the doctor reads the results, it'll show a match." Starla froze. How could she handle a DNA test? It was a blood draw. It went directly to the lab. "Yeah, well, we need the cash by Friday," Jessica continued. "The landlord is threatening to toss your stuff." "Let him. Once we get the payout from David, we can buy the whole building. Just keep the car out of sight. I think the neighbor was looking at it yesterday." She hung up. Starla's heart pounded against her ribs. "I handled it." What did that mean? She continued watching. Jessica went into the kitchen and opened her purse. She pulled out a small orange prescription bottle. She shook 2 pills into her hand and swallowed them dry. Starla zoomed in on the tablet, trying to read the label, but the resolution wasn't high enough. Suddenly, a notification popped up on Starla's phone, a text from Dr. Anderson's office. "Results are in early. Can you both come in at 4 p.m. today?" It was only 1 p.m. Starla had 3 hours. She needed to know what those pills were. If Jessica was taking something that could alter a test, impossible for DNA, but maybe something else. Or if she was sick. Starla drove back to the house. She entered quietly through the garage. She could hear the TV blaring in the living room. Jessica was distracted. Starla slipped her shoes off and crept toward the kitchen. Her purse was on the counter where she'd left it. Jessica's purse was next to it. She could hear Jessica laughing at a sitcom in the other room. Starla reached into Jessica's bag. Her fingers brushed against a wallet, a pack of gum, and then the smooth plastic of the pill bottle. She grabbed it and pulled it out. The label was peeled half off, but the name of the drug was visible: promethazine, an anti-nausea medication, common for morning sickness. But the prescribing doctor wasn't Dr. Anderson. It was a Dr. Timothy Sneed. Starla quickly snapped a photo of the bottle and the doctor's name, then shoved it back. As she turned to leave, she saw something else in the bag. A folded piece of paper. It looked like a receipt. She unfolded it. It wasn't a receipt. It was a letter. A letter from a clinic in Kentucky. "Dear Ms. Lauti, regarding your inquiry about the paternity of your fetus conceived on March 12th. March 12th. Starla did the math instantly. March 12th was before Jessica claimed to have met David. It was a full month before the drunken night. Jessica knew the baby wasn't David's. She had known all along. The floorboard creaked. Starla spun around. Jessica was standing in the doorway of the kitchen. The TV was muted. The smile was gone. In her hand, she held a heavy ceramic vase she had grabbed from the hallway table. "You really are nosy, aren't you?" Jessica said, her voice devoid of any warmth. "It's not his," Starla said, holding up the letter. "You know it's not his." "Does it matter?" Jessica stepped closer, raising the vase. "He thinks it is. And by the time he figures it out, I'll be gone with the settlement money. Or maybe you'll have a tragic accident, and I'll be the grieving mother who comforts him." "You're insane," Starla backed up, hitting the counter. "I'm a survivor, Starla, and you're in my way." Jessica lunged. Starla ducked, the vase shattering against the granite countertop, sending shards of ceramic flying. Starla scrambled toward the back door, but Jessica was faster than she looked. She grabbed Starla's hair, yanking her back. "Let go!" Starla screamed, driving her elbow into Jessica's ribs. Jessica grunted, but didn't let go. Mike was right. Should have just dealt with you first. They grappled in the kitchen, a chaotic mess of shoving and scratching. Jessica was younger and scrappy, fighting with street-brawling desperation. Starla was fighting for her life. Starla managed to push Jessica back. Jessica stumbled, her hip hitting the corner of the island hard. She cried out, clutching her stomach. "My baby!" she wailed, but the malice in her eyes didn't flicker. It was a performance even now. The front door burst open. "Starla! Jessica!" It was David. He had come home early for the appointment. Jessica instantly collapsed to the floor, sobbing hysterically. "David, help! She attacked me. She tried to kill the baby. She pushed me." David rushed into the kitchen, his eyes wide with horror. He saw the shattered vase, Starla's disheveled hair, and Jessica curled in a ball on the floor. "Starla!" David shouted, rushing to Jessica's side. "What did you do?" "She attacked me, David," Starla yelled, breathless. "She's a fraud. Look at the letter." She pointed to the floor where the letter had fallen during the struggle, but Jessica was quicker. She snatched the paper up and crumpled it into her fist, wailing louder. "She tried to hit me with the vase. She said she wouldn't let me have your baby." David looked at Starla, betrayal written all over his face. "Get out," he said, his voice shaking. "David, listen to me. I said get out. Go to the clinic. I'm taking Jessica. If you hurt this baby, Starla, I swear to God." Starla stared at him. He was completely under her spell. He couldn't see the truth even when it was screaming at him. "Fine," Starla said, straightening her clothes. She looked at Jessica, whose face was buried in David's shoulder, but whose eyes were watching Starla with a triumphant glint. "We'll go to the clinic, and Dr. Anderson will settle this once and for all." She walked out, grabbing her keys. She didn't go to the clinic yet. She called Robert. Rob, she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. Meet me at Dr. Anderson's office and bring the police. I know how she's planning to fake the test. How? She didn't fake the test, Starla said, starting the engine. She's banking on the fact that we won't look close enough at who the father really is. But I found the name of the real doctor she's been seeing. Dr. Timothy Sneed. Look him up. On it. Starla drove to the clinic. The game was over. It was time for the reveal. The waiting room of the clinic was painted a calming shade of sage green, designed to soothe anxious, expectant mothers. But for Starla, David, and Jessica, the room felt like a holding cell. Starla sat by the window, her back straight, watching the parking lot. She had texted Robert the moment they parked. "We are here. Bring the file, and bring backup." David sat in the corner, his head in his hands. He was a man eroding in real time. The altercation in the kitchen had shaken him. Not just the violence, but the sheer confusion of it. He wanted to believe Jessica. He needed to believe her because if he didn't, he had to accept that he had destroyed his marriage for a lie. Jessica sat opposite him, scrolling on her phone. She had fixed her hair and reapplied her lip gloss. She looked bored. Occasionally she would rub her stomach, catching David's eye and offering a weak, trembling smile. It was a masterclass in manipulation. "Mr. and Mrs. Benson and Ms. Harper." The nurse called them back. They filed into Dr. Anderson's private office. It was lined with diplomas and photos of smiling babies, the victories of his career. Dr. Anderson was already seated behind his desk. A thick manila folder lay closed in front of him. He didn't stand up. He didn't smile. He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and gestured for them to sit. "Thank you for coming in on such short notice," Dr. Anderson said. His voice was devoid of its usual warmth. It was clinical, precise. "Just tell us everything is fine with the baby," Jessica said, leaning forward. "David is so worried." "The fetus is healthy," Dr. Anderson said, his eyes flicking to her briefly before settling on David. "But we are here to discuss the paternity results." David took a deep breath. "Okay, let's get it over with. It's mine, right?" Dr. Anderson opened the folder. He pulled out a single sheet of paper with a graph on it. He turned it around so they could all see. "David," Dr. Anderson began, "I ran the standard DNA comparison between your sample and the fetal DNA isolated from Ms. Harper's blood sample. The markers are quite clear." He paused, letting the silence stretch until it was almost unbearable. "The probability of paternity is 0.0%. The air left the room. "What?" David whispered. "That's a lie," Jessica shouted, jumping to her feet. "You rigged it. Starla paid you to rig it." Dr. Anderson raised a hand, silencing her. "Ms. Harper, DNA does not lie. But to be absolutely certain, because this is a sensitive matter, I also ran a secondary test on David's sample, a fertility panel." He pulled out a second sheet. "David, do you remember 5 years ago, when you and Starla first started trying? We discussed testing you, but you insisted on focusing on Starla's treatments first, because you had fathered a pregnancy in college that ended in a miscarriage." David nodded, pale as a sheet. "Yeah. So I know I can have kids." "That was 20 years ago," Dr. Anderson said gently. "David, the results from today show that you have developed a condition called secondary azoospermia, likely caused by a severe infection or trauma you might not have even noticed years ago. Your sample contained 0 viable sperm cells." David stared at the doctor. "0? 0, Dr. Anderson confirmed. "It is medically impossible for you to have fathered this child. Or any child, naturally, for at least the last several years." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the hum of the air conditioner. David turned to Jessica. The look on his face wasn't anger, it was pure, unadulterated horror. He looked at her like she was a stranger he had found sleeping in his bed. "You knew," David rasped. "You knew I couldn't." Jessica's face changed. The mask didn't just slip, it shattered. The vulnerable, wide-eyed girl vanished. In her place was a cold, hard woman with eyes like flint. "So what?" Jessica spat. She didn't deny it. She didn't cry. She crossed her arms, leaning back in the chair with a sneer. "It doesn't matter whose it is. You still promised to take care of me. You signed a lease on that apartment, David. You're on the hook." "I'm on the hook for nothing," David roared, standing up. You lied. You tried to destroy my life. I didn't try, Jessica laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. I did. Look at you. Your wife hates you. Your reputation is one phone call away from being trash. You think anyone is going to believe the sterile excuse? I'll go to the press. I'll tell them you forced me to get an abortion. I'll ruin you. That's enough, Starla said. She hadn't moved. She spoke calmly, her voice cutting through the shouting. She reached into her purse and pulled out the photo she had taken of the pill bottle. She slid her phone across the desk toward Dr. Anderson. Dr. Anderson, does the name Timothy Sneed mean anything to you? Dr. Anderson looked at the screen and frowned. Sneed? He's a pain management specialist. He lost his license 2 years ago for overprescribing opioids. He operates let's call it a boutique clinic downtown now. Starla turned to Jessica. You weren't seeing an OB-GYN, you were seeing a disgraced doctor for prescriptions. Promethazine. And probably something stronger, right? To keep you calm. To keep the act going. Jessica's eyes darted to the door. She realized she had lost control of the room. This meeting is over, Jessica said, grabbing her purse. David, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. You don't have a lawyer, Starla said, standing up and blocking the path to the door. But you do have a boyfriend, Mike Travis. Jessica froze, the color drained from her face completely. How do you know that name? I know everything, Jessica. Or should I call you by your real name? Starla bluffed. She didn't know the full truth yet, but she knew enough to terrify her. I know about the scams in Ohio, I know about the extortion charge, and I know Mike is waiting outside right now. Jessica backed away, her hand fumbling in her purse. Mike isn't just my boyfriend, she whispered, her voice trembling for real this time. He's my manager, and if I don't walk out of here with a check, he's going to come in. Let him come, David said, stepping up beside Starla. For the first time in days, they stood as a unit. I'm calling the police. No, Jessica screamed. She lunged for David's phone, knocking it out of his hand. You don't understand. He's crazy. He'll kill us all. Suddenly, the glass window of the office reception area shattered. Crash. A heavy brick landed on the carpet, sending shards of glass skittering across the floor. Dr. Anderson hit the panic button under his desk. Get down. Through the broken window, a man's voice roared from the parking lot. Jessica, get the money and get out, now. The chaos was instant. The serene clinic erupted into panic. Nurses screamed in the hallway. Dr. Anderson ushered Starla and David away from the window, pushing them toward the file room in the back. Stay here, Dr. Anderson ordered, his face grim. Security is on the way. He's not going to wait for security, Starla said, looking at the brick. Wrapped around it was a note. She didn't need to read it to know what it said. I have to go out there, Jessica sobbed, huddled in the corner. He thinks I have the check, if I don't give it to him. He'll hurt you, David asked, his anger momentarily replaced by shock. He'll kill me, Jessica wept. You don't know him. He made me do this. He picked you, David. He tracked you for weeks. He said you were the perfect mark, soft, rich and guilty. Who is he? Starla demanded. Is he the father? Yes, Jessica cried. He's the father. He got me pregnant so we could pull this scam. It's the baby trap. It's his favorite play. We've done it twice before. Starla felt a wave of nausea. A baby created purely as a prop for a con. It was monstrous. We can't let her go out there, David said, looking at Starla. He'll kill her. We aren't letting anyone go anywhere, a voice boomed from the hallway. The door to the office flew open. It wasn't Mike. It was Robert. Starla's brother stood there, looking calm but intense. Behind him were 2 uniformed police officers and a man in a plain suit who looked like a detective. Rob, Starla exhaled, rushing to him. We got the call about the window, Robert said, holstering his phone. We saw a guy peeling out of the parking lot in a beat-up Ford Taurus. Mike Travis? Yes, Starla said. He threw a brick. He's gone, Robert said. Patrol units are pursuing him. He won't get far. He turned his gaze to Jessica, who was still cowering in the corner. And this must be the lady of the hour, Robert said, stepping into the room. Jessica wiped her eyes, trying to regain some composure. I want a lawyer. I'm a victim here. He forced me. You might be a victim of Mike, the detective in the plain suit said, stepping forward. He held up a tablet. But you're also a ghost, aren't you? Jessica went rigid. I don't know what you're talking about. We ran your prints, the detective said. Standard procedure when there's a domestic dispute involving extortion. We pulled them from the glass you drank from at the Benson's house. Starla's brother gave it to us. Starla looked at Robert. He winked. He had bagged the water glass she used during their confrontation earlier. And? David asked. Who is she? The detective looked at the tablet, then at Jessica. His expression was a mixture of pity and professional curiosity. Her name isn't Jessica Loughty, and it certainly isn't Jessica Harper. The detective turned the screen around. It showed an age progression photo of a young girl. Next to it was a photo of a 4-year-old child with bright blue eyes. The same eyes Jessica had. Her name is Emily Thorne, the detective said, and she's been missing for 22 years. The room went dead silent. Even the sounds of the clinic outside seemed to fade. Thorne? Dr. Anderson gasped. The Thorne kidnapping? From the Hamptons? The very same, the detective nodded. 22 years ago, the Thorne family was vacationing. Their 4-year-old daughter vanished from the backyard. The parents were wealthy, shipping magnates. They paid a ransom, but the baby was never returned. The money disappeared, and so did the kidnapper. Emily was shaking her head violently. No, that's not true. My name is Jessica. My mum was a waitress in Dayton. She died of an overdose. Your mom was likely an accomplice or the kidnapper's girlfriend, the detective said gently. We have your DNA on file from the original investigation. It's a familial match to the Thornes. 100%. Starla looked at the young woman. The malice, the grifting, the street-smart toughness, it was all a shell. Beneath it was a stolen child, raised by criminals to become a criminal. Mike, Jessica whispered. Mike knows. Mike knows? Robert asked. He used to brag, she stammered, her eyes unfocused. He said I was his $1 million ticket that expired. He said his dad messed up the exchange. He said I was expensive to keep. The realization hit everyone in the room. Mike Travis wasn't just a boyfriend. He was the son of the original kidnapper. He had inherited the victim. And when he couldn't ransom her anymore because too much time had passed, he decided to use her to con other men. Oh my God, Starla breathed. She reached out instinctively to touch the woman's arm. Jessica flinched, terrified. Don't. I'm bad. I did bad things. You were taught to do bad things, Starla said firmly. There is a difference. The detective stepped in. Ms. Thorne, Emily, we need to get you into protective custody. Mike is dangerous, and he knows the walls are closing in. If he gets desperate, he might come back. He will, Jessica said, looking at the broken window. He never leaves money on the table. As the officers moved to escort her out, David stood in the doorway. He looked at the woman he had slept with, the woman he thought was ruining his life. I'm sorry, David said quietly. Jessica looked at him. For the first time, her eyes were clear. You were nice to me, David, even when I was lying. That's why I picked you. You looked like a dad. The words hung in the air, a devastating indictment of everything that had happened. The police escorted her out the back exit. Robert stayed behind with Starla and David. So, Robert said, exhaling a long breath, that's a hell of an anniversary week. Is it over? David asked, leaning against the desk. Not yet, Robert said, checking his phone. The patrol cars lost Mike. He ditched the Taurus 3 blocks away. He's on foot. And Starla? Yeah? He has your address. He knows you're the one who blew this up. He knows you're the one who called me. Starla felt a cold chill return. We need to go, Robert said. Not home. To the precinct. Until they catch him. But before they could move, Starla's phone rang. It was her home landline. She stared at the screen. No one was home. She answered it, putting it on speaker. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice that sounded like gravel grinding together. You took my girl, Mike's voice hissed, and you cost me a lot of money, Starla. I'm at your house. I'm looking at your pretty wedding photos. If you want this to end, you come here, alone. Bring the cash you have in the safe, or I burn this place to the ground. The line went dead. Starla looked at David. She looked at Robert. He's at the house, she said. He's going to burn it down. Let him, David said. It's just a house. No, Starla said, a strange, fierce resolve taking over her. It's not just a house, it's my life. And I'm done running from this man. Starla, don't be stupid, Robert warned. Let the SWAT team handle it. He said alone, Starla said, her mind racing. If the police roll up with sirens, he'll torch it and run. He'll disappear again, and he'll come back for Emily. We have to end this tonight. I have a plan, Starla said, looking at her architect's drafting tube in the corner of the office where she'd left it earlier. I know that house better than anyone. I designed the renovation. I know the weak points. Starla, David started. Drive me, she commanded. We end this now. The street was eerily silent, but the flickering orange glow in the living room window screamed danger. He said alone, Starla told Robert, ignoring his protests about the tactical team 2 minutes out. If I don't go, he lights the match. David offered to join her, a flicker of late courage in his eyes, but Starla refused. Stay here. If this goes wrong, tell them everything. Using her intimate knowledge of the home's layout, she bypassed the front door, slipping in through a concealed side entrance she had designed years ago. The air inside was thick with gasoline fumes. She found Mike in the living room, a lit flare hissing in his hand, a red gas can at his feet. Where's the cash? Mike roared, his eyes wild with desperation. In the safe, Starla lied, forcing her voice to remain steady. Upstairs, master bedroom. He sneered but shoved her toward the stairs. Move, one wrong step and we all burn. Inside the master bedroom, the tomb of her marriage, Mike forced her to the wall safe. Open it. Starla punched in the code. The door swung open to reveal nothing. Mike screamed in fury, raising the flare to strike. You played me. No, Starla said, her voice hard as flint. I beat you. She slammed her hand against a hidden panic button inside the safe. Instantly, the house plunged into total darkness, the electromagnetic locks engaging with a deafening thud. Mike stumbled, blinded and disoriented. Before he could recover, the bedroom window shattered inward. Police! Drop the flare! Red laser sights danced on Mike's chest. He froze, the flare rolling harmlessly across the floor as SWAT officers tackled him, pinning him to the hardwood. David rushed in moments later, breathless and pale. Starla, are you okay? He reached for her, desperate to reclaim his role as protector. Starla looked at him, really looked at him, and saw only a stranger. The man whose weakness had invited this chaos into their lives. I'm fine, she said, stepping back from his touch. I'm perfectly fine. She walked past him, down the stairs, and out the front door into the cool night air, leaving the ruins of her marriage behind forever. 3 months later, the ink on the divorce papers was dry. Starla sat in her new office, a loft space in the city with exposed brick and huge windows that let in floods of natural light. It was chaos, but it was her chaos. David had moved to Seattle. He had lost his job after the scandal broke, not because of the baby, but because the investigation into Mike Travis revealed David had inadvertently used company funds to pay for Jessica's apartment. It was a mess of embezzlement charges and moral clauses. He was working in a warehouse now, starting over at 40. Starla didn't wish him ill. She just didn't wish him anything at all. As for Jessica, or Emily Thorne, the news was everywhere. The lost heiress returns. It was the story of the decade. The Thorne family had welcomed her back with tears and open arms. But the reunion wasn't a fairy tale. Emily was damaged. She had spent 20 years in the dark, raised by wolves. She was currently in a private facility in Switzerland, receiving the therapy she desperately needed. Starla picked up a letter from her desk. It had arrived that morning, postmarked from Zurich. Dear Starla, they tell me I should write to the people I hurt. Step 4, or something like that. I'm sorry I wrecked your house. I'm sorry I stole your necklace, but mostly I'm sorry I made you doubt yourself. You were the only one who saw me. Not the pregnant girl, not the scammer. You saw the scared kid. Thank you for not letting Mike burn me down. Starla folded the letter and placed it in her drawer. She smiled, a genuine, easy smile that reached her eyes. She turned back to her drafting table. A fresh sheet of vellum was pinned there. She picked up her pencil. She wasn't designing a house for a couple this time. She was designing a community center for at-risk youth. A place with strong foundations, open spaces, and plenty of light. The mistress had come to claim a life. Instead, she had given Starla back her own. And that is the incredible, twisted story of how a fake pregnancy revealed a 20-year-old kidnapping mystery. It's a reminder that sometimes the things that break our lives apart are actually the things that save us from a lie we didn't know we were living. If you were Starla, could you have forgiven David? Or do you think he got exactly what he deserved? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. We have a shocking new mystery coming next week that you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.